Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I want to revisit the game Cultist Simulator. I talked about it a little bit when I did my Worshippers of Cthulhu video, and I just thought it was probably time to take a look at it again. It had been a while. The game came out in 2018. I've played it a whole bunch, and I just thought it would be fun to check it out again. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, I'm going to dive right in. Cultist Simulator is this weird card game where you're basically playing as a cultist and you've got all kinds of things to keep track of. In a lot of ways, the game is not that difficult once you understand the systems, just because you could kind of understand where all of the different timers are going and then you can counter them. Now, that said, I've beaten the game a few times and I can say that I was really good at it back when I was playing it a lot. Like, I could keep track of everything. I knew what it all meant. But coming back to it, I will say that I lost most of my experience and I was just behind the 8-ball the entire time. Now, part of that is I'm fairly sure that they've done some tweaking. I mean, there's been a lot of patches. There was a period of time where they did a whole lot of patching because they made some kind of error, or I don't know what happened specifically. But I do remember, like, every day there was a new patch for it for like a week until they got it all resolved. So I'm sure that they've done a few things to make different systems within the game either harder or streamlined or whatever. But I did look it up and I did find that some people were complaining that it was a lot harder to stay ahead in the finance game. And I'll admit that this playthrough that I videoed here was just miserable when it came to the money. Now, part of that is because I fell back on the thing I remembered, which was that you could paint and make money, and it just wasn't pulling in the cash that I was hoping it would. I'm going to take a step back and go over some of the broad aspects of Cultist Simulator and exactly what you have to do. Sort of the contention of the game is that it's all about trial and error. You're grabbing the cards and you're seeing, well, where can I apply that? What is this timer and what is it doing? There's not really a tutorial. There isn't a whole lot of guidance. You click on the cards and they'll give you a description of sort of what they mean or what they do and where they can go. And then you've just got to experiment your way through it. And there are a whole bunch of numbers that kind of give it a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors feel. But you've got to learn what even those mean throughout the game. You know, read the lore, explore it a little bit. Now, this was more true back when I first started playing. Now there's Wikipedia articles and YouTube videos, and pretty much you could walk through the game and beat the game without having to really do the main part of the game, which is, again, the exploration part. You wouldn't really have to learn all that stuff because there are tutorials online. In fact, I tried to make one, but my audio got all messed up way back when, and I never posted it. But I did a whole playthrough, which took about 3 hours, and walked through every aspect of the game. Now, that was after playing the game several times. So how does it work? Well, basically, you start off with a very blank board. You've basically got the work icon, and you've got one thing to do with it. So you start your job, and when that happens, you lose your job, and then you've got some more cards to play with. You can continue to work. You can do some studying. You get a package that you can open up that starts you on the path of being in a cult, and so on and so forth. You start to build up followers that can do things for you. They have statistics. These statistics apply towards studying more of the occult, and ultimately, you just continue on until you either die or ascend. The idea is that eventually you'll become this sort of avatar of your cult. And there are several different types of cults as well, because each of the different aspects within the game has a different path to go down. So like the Moth is a knowledge-seeking one. The Edge cults are sort of violent and that sort of thing. And there's a whole bunch of them. If you go and look them up, you can really learn it. The lore is absolutely enthralling. And for whatever reason, the music really enhances the feel of all of this too. Every time you kind of look into one, it's pretty cool. It has a very 20s feel if you can look at the card pictures of the characters and stuff. You know, they've got hairstyles that really match that period. And when you read about what they do, they've got some really unhinged skills. There's like a scholar and a duelist. It's like, what are you doing? I mean, how are you even dueling people in this era? There are a whole lot of ways that you can lose in this game as well. So you've got to keep up your finances because every day, which is basically a 60-second timer, it's going to take one of your finances to pay for food and lodging. And then if you don't, you'll start to get a hunger card, and then that hunger card will take away your health, and eventually you'll just die of hunger. If you can't keep up with your feelings of dread, your character will start to have this sense of dread. So you need to acquire contentment to counter it. And contentment can be found by painting. It can be found by dreaming with money. You could go to a club when you find it, and then you'll get contentment, which can counter the dread. If you get 3 dread, then you lose. If you allow a detective or a hunter to gather enough evidence, you could be arrested and lose the game. So there are loads of ways to fail. And in a lot of ways, you can actually sort of be failing, but not necessarily realize it. I felt like at the end of this playthrough that I did for this video, I was pretty much failing. I mean, I played for 2 hours and I was at a point where I was just doing the work as fast as I could, and it was barely keeping up with my need for money. And if I had stopped doing that, then I was going to get a hunger card almost immediately. So as an aspirant, you do have a lot of struggle in that regard until you figure out either how to paint the right way to get money, and that would involve more inspirations, because at this point it seems that painting specifically can denigrate down to where you're not making as much. So like I made 5 coins a couple of times. That's 5 days worth of living. And then it dried up big time because I just didn't have anything to use as inspiration. It's a little bit complicated in that way too, because you've got to, figure out what to put in there to use for the painting. You use like passion, and then you put in other things. You could put in notoriety, which allows people to come to you and see your art more. You can use mystique, which makes the art have a different aspect. And then you could decide what is your inspiration. It could be a follower. It could be all kinds of stuff. But I found in this playthrough that using some of it just didn't help. And after I used my cult's sort of lore thing once and made a bunch of money, it never really made money again. So you've got to constantly be chasing the next thing, which that was not the way it was way back when I first started playing. I was able to just use the same types of stuff over and over and make between 2 and 4 coins. Now I was making sometimes none at all, which is really rough, because if you're using your work time and you make nothing, you don't even make 1 coin, then you can really find yourself falling behind. And without coins, you can't do things like buy books, which you need to enhance the cult. You can't really even explore any of the locations you find, because even though you could send followers out there, they still need coins in order to deal with the efforts. So at this playthrough, I did an exploration of some nasty cathedral place, and I thought that you just needed to deal with it with some edge. So I sent a couple characters that had edge, and for whatever reason, that didn't work out. So, I'd have to do more trial and error to figure out, well, what does this one need to counter so that I can actually finish it? And then I ended up just wasting the money and the time that I could have used somewhere else, because I ultimately failed that expedition, which may have actually assisted me in a whole bunch of other stuff if I would have gotten something. For example, I had a commission I could have followed, and I needed a piece of lore in order to do that. But in order to get that lore, I needed to go on an expedition. And in order to go on that expedition, I needed money. You could see where this is going. Effectively, you can avalanche into a no-win scenario to where you're just kind of screwed. Now, the interesting part about this game is that, well, first off, there's a lot of DLC, and there are other ways to play the game. The first time you play, you're an aspirant. When you die and you say, let's try again, you'll get 3 options to try something else. An example is pretty young thing. Your character is a young person who has some money, and it starts you off on a fairly different path of what you can make money doing. There is a physician one where you could be a doctor and make some pretty good money. So there are additional ways to go at this that will make some of the systems much easier to handle. There are some other options to play as well. You could play as a ghoul, which is basically a monster. You could play as a priest. There's the dancer, where there's this club in the game and your character can work there and start a cult that basically turns them into a monster. There's even one called the exile, where your character's kind of on the run. That one is so hard, I've never even been able to come close to finishing it. And finally, if you beat the game, a brand new path opens where you're basically the Ascended and your characters are trying to sort of help that character do what they need to do because they no longer have earthly concerns. And so you're going at it trying to go to the next level, I guess. I will say that that one was also so hard that I never managed to get very far with it. It just, some of these become so painfully difficult that they're kind of not fun. I've got to be honest. Like the countdown stuff is so quick. A great example is that in that Ascended one, I lost within minutes because I just couldn't keep up with what was happening, which is kind of absurd in a way because your cult is well established in that one. It should have been a little bit easier to at least ramp up and then become more difficult later. But some of these are just hard right off the bat. Even the dancer can get pretty difficult, although I did beat the game as the dancer before, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one. Honestly, everything but the aspirant is a lot more fun to start the game off, which is sad because your first playthrough is going to be as the aspirant, unless, of course, you die really, really, really fast. And then, yeah, I guess at that point, it won't matter because then you could try it another way. But all around, I think that Cultist Simulator is a really creative and interesting game. It was a lot more fun for me way back when it first came out than it was this time through. Now, I'm going to be fair. It may be because I forgot a lot of stuff and just screwed myself over. It might be that I just don't like playing as the aspirant. And if I would have started as one of the others, I would have had a lot more fun. I don't know, but I would still recommend it, even though it frustrated me just now, because again, it's on me. It's definitely not on the game. I'll also say that I have played this game on the iPad and it was awesome. It was super fun to just kick back and use a mobile device to do it. I thought that it worked very well. I don't know if it has all the DLC or not anymore. I only played it way back when it first came out on the iPad, and then I haven't really touched it since. I mean, there's only so many times you can go through the game before you feel like maybe you have experienced enough. It's not that there isn't replay value, because there is. You could totally do it from different angles. You could see the lore and experience a lot of different stuff. However, that said, I personally was like, okay, I think I've gone far enough, because it is a little stressful. It's not as casual as it looks. When you see the pictures of all these cards laid out, you're like, well, I don't know, that looks okay. But no, it's definitely a little more hardcore than that, especially since you could just lose. Early on, when I first started playing, I was doing great. I thought everything was fine, and I didn't notice the red numbers from my dread meter, and all of a sudden I lost. I'm like, what? What happened? How? And then it shows you, and I'm like, no way, that's impossible. It taught me a very valuable lesson, but that roguelike quality can make it kind of rough, because obviously I thought I was doing fantastic and I was on the way to succeeding at the game, and then I just lost just instantaneously, and that's pretty rough. So all around though, I think that it's a great game if you can get over the fact that you will be doing some exploration, or you're going to be looking at a wiki to understand the systems. Whether or not you could tolerate that, it's kind of on you. Right now, as of this video, the game only costs $7.99. That is 100% worth it. I would buy that hands down right now. Get off this video and go buy this game and play it. It's worth that much. And, you know, you got 2 hours. It will take about an hour and a half to really get a feel for the game itself. My 2-hour playthrough got me far enough in that I think I'd feel fairly confident in my decision on whether or not I was going to keep the game. So if you buy it on Steam, you got that 2-hour window to make sure you really enjoy it. I wouldn't play it for like 20 minutes and give it a judgment. This is definitely something that deserves at least an hour to really understand what you're getting into. Make liberal use of pause, definitely use the fast forward, and just pay attention to the timers, and I think you'd have a good time. But let me know in the comments below. Have you played Cultist Simulator? Have you played a game like it? Do you think this looks fun? Let's talk about it. Anyway, this is Robert with Society Case Files, signing off.